But as it turned out, once we got everybody down to Asbury's headquarters, now we find out through the preponderance of evidence that Anna Marie was actually killed in Asbury. They drove her over to Ocean to dump her body. They tried to dig a hole in that field that I mentioned behind Burger King, but because that motel was still under there, that's what kept them from digging a hole. And I'll be honest, if they had been able to dig a hole, we might still be wondering what happened to poor Anna Maria Leswitz. It just, like I said, everything happens for a reason. It sure did in this case. And we obviously, after that, it was basically Asbury's murder case. The county was involved with them with it. We went back and did our processing back in Ocean, report writing and everything like that. But at that point, there was no reason for me to keep involved. I knew there were other victims they were talking about. And that's why it was so important to document all those things about the weapons and things, because Fitzgerald had a lot of weapons with silencers in them, on them, that they were homemade silencers. And there was a murder of Billy Ward, which I testified in 2 trials. The first one was Anna Maria Leswitz, and that's depicted in the picture in the background here, where I'm going over the map of the house. And then Billy Ward was the next case, and they got a venue change. So we went down to Mount Holly to do that case. But other than myself, there weren't a lot of other people testifying because everything was pretty much sewn up with statements. We had all the players, and Fitzgerald had rolled over at that point. So he was testifying. Some of the other people were testifying. Myself was testifying about all the evidence. And even though the evidence for the Billy Ward case wasn't my particular case, the evidence was. And so they were talking about what he was shot with. Turned out to be that Beretta Minx too. But we had another Ruger, I think, semi-auto with a bent barrel that had a silencer on it. And I got a feeling that Fitzgerald must have hit somebody with this gun and actually bent the barrel. So I don't even know if the thing would have functioned. But Biegenwald ended up coming out and shooting him anyway. He was, I guess, a drug dealer that they had dealings with and all that thing. And then the stuff started coming out about, well, there's all these other bodies, and Fitzgerald was showing them where they were up in Staten Island and out on Essex Road, and Billy Ward was in Mount Carmel Cemetery. I didn't get involved in those parts of that because I didn't need to, and there were enough. I'll tell you, it was there were a lot of people involved in the case. So Miller told me, no, go back to headquarters. We don't need you for these things. And I had a bunch of cases sitting on my desk anyway, so I just went about doing the other things, but just making sure I documented all the things that were going on with the case with Biegenwald.
Yeah, you mentioned about the cigarette lighters, the makeshift ones that you push down on the wheel and it sparks and it lights up. They had, excuse me, converted those into a .22 caliber gun.
Yeah.
How many were there? Did you find?
The picture that I just held up for you, which I don't know if I did it too quickly for you to see.
If you put it in front of you, I'll be able to see it. Right directly in front of you. No, your background is blocking it from showing for some reason.
Oh,
It's blocking
well,
it out. Yeah.
this picture I took afterwards in the evidence vault at Monmouth County, because I actually sent a bulletin to police departments because these guys weren't alone. I mean, it wasn't just Fitzgerald and Biegenwald. They had some other players that were dealing with them. They were making some kind of uh, shoulder fired, like a rocket launcher. I mean, there was some weird stuff. They had a copy of the Anarchist Cookbook and things like that, and they were, doing. So this photo has 4 of those devices in here, the Bic lighters, and they were the big Bic lighters. And what they did is they put a lever on the side of it, and it was in the basement right behind Begenwald's bedroom. Now, I would figured that they were both working on these things. That was just a supposition. But I did find out later when his death penalty got overturned in New Jersey, and it got converted to life in prison. Um, Somebody who worked out there told me, whenever that guy might be a psycho, but if one of our typewriters or something breaks, he can fix anything. And I said, well, you know what? With this lighter thing, maybe it was him who was, the main builder. And they were packing the mechanism in lucite and then honing it down so it would slide back in the lighter. Well, as soon as I saw that, like I said, I'm kind of like, I don't want to say Mr. Wizard, but, I have a mechanical mind. I was a mechanic for a while before I was a cop and things. And I saw that thing and I said, something ain't right here. And I told on the radio and I yelled upstairs, don't anybody touch a lighter. They're making guns out of them and maybe bombs. And everybody said, yeah, okay, yeah. And next thing I heard was a bang. And I heard Al Lair uttering a few colorful metaphors at one of the detectives who decided to either light a cigarette with that or
Try
said,
it.
gee, I wonder what this lever does.
Yeah. And fortunately, no one got injured on that. So,
It missed Al Lair, but not by much. And he was quite upset.
wow.
And I heard him, I could hear him saying, didn't you hear what Kevin said? Don't touch any of this crap. He says, what, you think he's just talking, to hear himself? Well, I often do, but I wasn't that time.
You know,
Um,
God, I'm
we
sorry.
packaged up everything. And while we were packaging up, we actually had, I'm going to say, a couple of shifts of guys from the county came, they called a couple of more guys to come help us, basically just, pack stuff in the evidence van and things like that. And one of the guys, uh, that closet that I mentioned that had the bombs in it, um, he felt that one of the floorboards was a little wonky. And we pried up the floorboard, and there was a briefcase in there with a MAC-10 submachine gun in there that they had converted to fully automatic, and they had coated the bullets that were in the magazine and in the briefcase with Teflon, and obviously with the idea that they defeat any kind of body armor and probably penetrate maybe the metal in a car. I wasn't going to go out and shoot up my cop car because I figured I'd get in trouble for that to test that theory. But
Hmm.
uh, there was, and that briefcase is also where that book that I spoke about, it was almost like a little ledger book, and they were just writing down good ideas of the week, and There were other explosive devices other than pipe bombs, like cardboard tubes crammed with explosives and then sealed with some kind of plastic or something so that, well, they'd certainly do some damage. So everybody obviously got removed from the house, arrested and charged. And as things went on, there were more or less charges for, because Fitzgerald had a live-in girlfriend there, Jennifer Metz, I think her name was. And she may not have been charged because some of this, they just kind of, it seemed like they didn't know kind of what was going on. Of course, if your boyfriend builds a secret room in the house behind a mirror, you might be wondering, what's that all about? And I think he was growing pot plants in there, which, you know, back in the 80s was still a problem. And so now I live in Florida, so I'm not sure what they're doing with that, but
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly. One thing that I find interesting in the research that I've done, and you look at his thrill killings of these young women, and normally when you see a serial killer, they have an MO, a method of operation. They don't really deviate too much from that.
Agreed.
In this case, all your findings besides Anna, all your findings in his apartment really indicate nothing towards his, other than the handgun and the ammo, but everything else kind of speaks to something else, criminal activity on a scale that, who knows what would have happened, but who knows what happened before he was arrested. I know his attorney, Lou Diamond, believes that he killed upwards of over 100 people.
Yeah.
And he believes he was a hitman. And he worked for the mob, and Lou Diamond gets that.
Well, John, if I can, one of the things that's interesting about what you're saying, there was, as I said, 13 hours, and we took a pile of evidence on that place. But yeah, in the basement, other area, see, the basement was common to the whole house. However, the only way you could get down there were two ways. One was through Biegenwald's apartment, through the floor that he had cut a hole. The other way was in the hallway. There was a door that went down, but that was padlocked. And the door was secured, with a big padlock. And we actually were going to cut the lock, but Diane Biegenwald was the only one with a key for it. Well, Biegenwald had it. So she gave us the key. But when I was down in that whole common area, and Fitzgerald obviously spent time down there because those guys were in cahoots and up to no good. But we found several guns of varying sizes and mostly automatics with disassembled, the barrels missing on a lot of them. And usually when I see something and the barrel's missing, I'm figuring somebody doesn't want you running ballistics on that. And that was the same way with some of the other 22 weapons we found that, they had this. Fitzgerald had, or maybe both of them, a couple of sawed-off shotguns. As I said, the bombs, the remote control servos, all sorts of other little odds and ends, and they were stocking a good amount of ammunition. And these lighters, I think they were putting 22 longs in them. They had a little bit more oomph, but I think you could still hang on to it if it fired. Maybe you should ask the detective who tried to shoot the flare.
Yeah.
if it flew out of his hand, or if you could hang on to it. But all those things aside, it was just a wealth of not only information, but yeah, when we saw those pictures of the guys with this, the guy had this thing on his shoulder. I'll tell you the truth, it looked like a Civil War mortar. I mean, it was kind of massive, and they were shooting like giant steel balls out of this thing. And I'll be honest with you, I forget. They might have been going out to the Essex Road area out in West near the Parkway and testing some of these things. And that might explain why uh, at least one victim was buried out there.